You may be familiar with one of these. This is a PLASSON 63mm metric compression fitting. We call it our Line 7 fitting, and we've been making these since the 1970s. A cornerstone of the design is that we machine a groove in the body of the fitting here, and that keeps the seal captive so that it can't fall out and get lost. And the way we operate this fitting is we undo the nut, that releases the white grip ring here, and that allows the fitting to be inserted onto the pipe. Pipe goes through the grip ring, it goes through the seal, and at that point this fitting becomes watertight, and then it reaches the end stop, which is halfway through the fitting. We then do up the nut. The reason we're doing up the nut is not to seal the fitting, but to make the grip ring bite down on the surface of the pipe, and that prevents the fitting and the pipe pulling apart from one another. On our larger fittings, from 75 up to 125mm, we have a different design. I'll show you what's inside. In these fittings, the O-ring, instead of being captive in the body, is held in place by this insert here, and the reason we do that is so that if the line happens to be pressurized and somebody accidentally undoes the nut, what happens is the O-ring moves forward, air gets behind it, and it whistles, so it creates an early warning alert to the installer that the line is pressurized. If there's water or some other fluid, then the fitting will leak, but either way the installer's given warning that the line is pressurized and they can shut it off. Because there's so much 63mm pipe in the mines, in 2003 we introduced a new fitting with the same design as our larger fittings. So we've got an O-ring held in place by an insert. We call this our 63mm Minesafe fitting. And the way we can tell our two fittings apart is because the cone on this nut is plain on the standard design. On the Minesafe design, the cone here has got ridges on it. The other thing about this fitting is that the mouth of the fitting has a chamfer in it, and that makes it much easier to use on coiled or oval pipe. So the two fittings are installed differently, so I'll show you how that's done. Okay. We'll start with our standard fitting. Best practice is always to chamfer the end of the pipe. So we've got a chamfering tool here. Chamfers the end of the pipe. We also use a bit of silicone-based lube on the end of the pipe. It just eases insertion, means you need less force to get the fitting onto the pipe. We back off the nut so you can see several threads. We insert it onto the pipe, and we ensure that the fittings are driven all the way home until it hits the end stop inside, so the fitting can't go further onto the pipe. We do up the nut by hand, and then we use PLASSON wrenches. Always use PLASSON wrenches, and we do a half a turn beyond hand tight. And now we'll install our 63mm Minesafe fitting. So the installation process is different. First of all, we put the nut onto the pipe. We don't put the grip ring on, we leave it to one side. We put the insert onto the pipe, and we use a bit of lube on the O-ring to ease the insertion as we put the O-ring on the pipe end. And we make sure all of this is assembled one diameter back from the pipe end. So in this case it's 63mm pipe, so about 63mm from the end of the pipe. We then bring up the body of the fitting. Remember, it's got a chamfer in here which eases insertion if you're dealing with coil pipe or oval pipe. And we do up the nut hand tight. We then back off the nut. And if you look inside the fitting, you'll see that the insert here has pushed the O-ring up against a seat inside the fitting body. So the O-ring is evenly located on the seat. We bring the grip ring onto the pipe, position it like so, and we do the nut up hand tight. And then we do the nut up half a turn with PLASSON wrenches. Don't use extensions on the wrenches, and never over tighten the nut. The reason for that is that the grip ring here, if the nut is over tightened, the grip ring can open up, it can splay open, and it can weaken the fitting, and it can result in blowouts. If you're relocating the fitting from one position on the pipe to another position, or you're reusing the fitting, always take out the existing grip ring, destroy it, and then throw it away so that nobody else can use it. The reason for that is the teeth become blunt, They may not bite into the pipe surface and then you risk a blowout. So always use new grip rings when you're reusing a fitting. All of these instructions are on a poster we have. If you need a copy, please see your PLASSON territory manager.